Hello and welcome back to the TVBinges.com Pilot Roundtable, a Southgate Media Group podcast. I'm Kyle Tremblay, the editor of TVBinges.com, and I am joined as always by a fellow TV Binges writer. She's traveling through time and impressing people with her ability to predict canceled TV shows. It's Olivia Richards! Hello!
Hey guys! Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, well, you know, this is like a giant team of superheroes for our pilot today, and you are just another one of them with your TV-related powers.
Yes.
So, if you haven't guessed by now, we are talking about the CW's next entry into its DC universe. From the creator of Arrow and The Flash, it's DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Olivia, what did you think?
For someone like me who is not I'm not like a comic book fan, or I'm not an avid comic book reader, and like I'm not super familiar with any of these universes or many of the characters, this was definitely kind of a culture shock and definitely kind of intro into the universe when it all kind of came at once. But,
yeah. So what was your overall sort of impression of it? Like, because I'm coming from largely the same spot as you are, although I did watch Arrow for 2+ seasons, but I'm definitely not a comic book person. So what was did you have any big picture takeaways?
I'm like, that's the thing. I was just kind of caught up in everything. And I think, you know, coming from a perspective of, you know, like I'm not a huge diehard fan. Not like I'm not a fan, but, you know, I'm not someone who's like been following this all their life or is like even a little bit familiar with anything.
Right.
It was just so much at once. And I was kind of just watching everything as it happened.
Yeah, me too. Honestly.
I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay.
Honestly, like you and I are not qualified to be talking about this show, and it was like apparent immediately, but that in itself is kind of a problem, and I'm sure I'll get into my superhero rant at some point that I go on about every superhero show.
I'm waiting for it. Is this going to be like Heroes Reborn?
It is. Yeah, I have the same rant, so that's chambered, but it's just like, you know, if you're just making TV shows to appease your audience, what are you really doing? You know, this show to me is weirdly low on ambition, because it's, like you said, it just right away gets into like the superhero-ness of it all. And there's very little attempt made to expand beyond being just a superhero show. You know, there's no like secondary genre for this show. It is just superheroes. The premise is, I think 9 heroes are chosen very quickly in like the first 3 minutes to venture through time and stop a guy named Vandal Savage from taking over the world. And that's about it. There's not a whole lot else.
That about sums it up.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's nothing here for someone who isn't like immediately invested in all of that. Like if you didn't read the comic books, if you're not a DC universe head, if you're just a TV watcher who's trying to come in with an open mind, there's just nothing here. I mean, there's nothing. So I don't know what to really do about that.
That's the thing, and I'm like, you know, I kind of want to hear like a show like this reviewed from someone from the perspective of someone who is like a diehard fan of, you know, the comic book universe and, you know, for all of these separate shows as they're coming together as a bigger whole. Because I'm like, I don't know whether it's just because like we're not, you know, super invested. I don't want to say super invested, but like, you know, we're not diehard fans of the universes. So like maybe there's like not an emotional attachment there, but, you know, objectively looking at it, it was just so much happening.
Yeah, and I guess, okay, here's my rant that I go into all of these. It's like,
there it is.
It's like, okay, there was some good stuff about this, I should say. Like, the action scenes that were mostly in the second half of the episode were actually really good and really well choreographed, and that was one of the great strengths of Arrow, and I assume still is a strength of that show, which is that it does action really well. And I thought the scene where the Boba Fett character, and that is the name he was given in the show, someone called him a Boba Fett character, is trying to attack their spaceship. There was like a really good action sequence there, and there was a really fun sequence on the dance floor where Katie Lotz from Arrow who's been shifted over to this show. Beats up some skeevy dudes on the dance floor. That was a lot of fun. And it's like,
that was great.
Yeah, there's good sequences here, and there is definitely a vibe to this show of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is like the one like comic book movie that I actually enjoy. And I enjoyed that for two reasons. First, because Chris Pratt is freaking charming and is a movie star and is awesome, and I love Parks and Rec, so I was predisposed to like Chris Pratt. But then also, equally important, is that script for Guardians of the Galaxy really made an effort to make that character appealing in a way that is not just appealing to people who already knew who he was. Like that character, like Pratt obviously has a lot of charm, but equally charming was the way that character was written and the way the storytelling unfolded to make him appeal to an audience that may or may not be familiar with the source material. What this show does, and what Heroes Reborn did, in my famous rant about Heroes Reborn, infamous I should say, and what I talk about with virtually all of these dumb superhero shows is they make no effort whatsoever in that regard. There is, I can't even express how little effort is being made here to make the characters or the storytelling appeal in any way to someone who isn't already invested in this universe. And that, I think, is such a... These shows, and definitely Heroes Reborn, and this show too, is so freaking lazy. It is just so lazy that it's like, oh, hey... In the first 2 minutes, we're going to have this guy giving a presentation to the Time Lords, and the Time Lords are going to deny him, so he's going to go back in time, and within 5 minutes, he's assembled a crew to save the world, and it's like, make me interested in that. Like, just saying it is nothing. It's like, it reminds me of the Office episode where Michael Scott is not doing so well and he needs to declare bankruptcy. And so he walks into the office and he yells, "I declare bankruptcy." And then Oscar walks in and says, you know, that's nothing, right? Like, that you didn't do anything declaring bankruptcy. You can't just say it and have it be true. You can't say there are worldwide stakes and then there are worldwide stakes. That's not how any of this works. That's not how storytelling works in any form. You can't just say, oh, this character is a charming rogue, and then suddenly he's a charming rogue. That isn't how television, movies, books, stone paintings, none of that works like this. You can't, and these shows come along and they just think like, oh, you know, we're gonna save the world. We're gonna assemble a band of superheroes. You're gonna care about all of it. It's like, no, you have to give me a reason to care about it. Your premise isn't your reason. And a show like this does so little to justify why I would care about any of this. That it literally would only appeal to someone who it has already appealed to in a different form. And that's what's frustrating to me. Is like it doesn't seem like it would take an enormous amount of effort. And Arrow is a good example of this, the early seasons of Arrow, where I felt like that was a human story first and a superhero story second. It doesn't seem like it would take that much effort to do something like that here, and it just doesn't even try. It is only trying to appeal to people who already like it. It has no interest in appealing to anyone else. And so in that way, I feel like we are the most qualified people to review it, because someone who already cares about this story, of course they're going to like it. This is specifically for them. But the crossover stuff is where I think these shows live and die. And for me, there's just nothing here that even attempted to make me interested. And so that's the end of my rant.
The end. Yeah. No, I think you touched on some really good points, and I think, you know, a lot of what I was thinking while watching it, in that I was very caught up in, like, the action sequences, and, you know, it had some, you know, really cool moments. But again, it's kind of what we talk about with a lot of shows, where it's sort of the smoke and mirrors effect, where if you took all of that away, which was like 90% of the show,
right,
then, like, there's nothing left. It's sort of like trying to build a house without a foundation, and that, like, soon enough it's going to crumble. And especially with this one, because there's so much happening, like, I kind of feel like almost like it's an exclusive club where, like, you know, if you weren't a fan of everything before, then it's sort of like, good luck.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you're saying, there's no there. There's no, you've got all this dressing. You've got reasonably high production values, although they occasionally dip. You've got a cast that varies from pretty good, which is, I would consider Katie Lott's actually good, to like disastrously bad. Some of these heroes. I mean, if you cast like 9 leads for your show, of course some of them are going to be like so wooden they might set on fire at any moment. But there's no reason to care about any of them. There's no reason in this pilot to treat any of them as like real, fully formed human beings. It's just a bunch of superheroes dealing with superhero problems on an intergalactic scale, and none of it matters at all. And the show makes no effort to make any of it matter. There's no sense of what the world is. There's no sense of why the world is worth saving. It's just like there's just nothing. I mean, even for a superhero show, this is a lot of nonsense. And it's just a whole lot of nonsense and way too much exposition in this pilot, because if your premise is nonsense, you can't have a bunch of exposition like trying to justify the nonsense. I'd much rather have that exposition centered towards trying to make me understand who any of these characters are, or give me some reason to care about any of this, because that was the whole time I was just watching and just not understanding why I would care at all, or what the point of all of this is. So
I'm definitely in the same boat, and I think, again, just feeling so overwhelmed with plot, and like that's sort of the shows that usually like, really frustrate me and lose me immediately if, there's no kind of any human element happening. And it's so odd to see that, because it's like the shows, there have been so many superhero shows so far. Like really this year has been like the year of superhero shows. Mm-hmm. And there have been so many that have accomplished balancing, and kind of emphasizing the human element and then adding the superhero element on top of it as sort of like, the cherry on top. And like this one didn't do that. And it was just, again, it was disappointing, because like obviously it can be done.
Yeah.
And this one just didn't.
Not at all. And if you look at how like The Flash started, that really humanized its characters right off the bat. And I don't still watch The Flash, but I did enjoy the few episodes that I did watch. It never felt essential to me. But I certainly respected that show for what it was, and certainly gave it a thumbs up on the podcast. It's like, It's like you can, just because you're set in a nonsense universe doesn't mean that the show has to be nonsense. You can look, I mean, I am like a huge Game of Thrones fan, and all of that is nonsense. It's not, the problem isn't like with superheroes themselves. It's with this laziness of not even trying, of just relying on previous factors to make it appeal. I think for a show like this, it really comes down to how hard the show is willing to work to actually justify itself. And this is an example of a show that felt absolutely no need to do any work. And like when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. started, that show was exactly the same way. It felt no need to do any work to justify itself. And based on my understanding, in season 2, they sort of recalibrated and realized that, oh wait, just having the Marvel name doesn't do anything for us. Like, we've actually got to put some work into this. And apparently the show got a lot better. That's what's going to have to happen here, because right now they aren't doing enough work to make this show appealing, and it really shows up. And this pilot just felt, I mean, it just in one ear out the other. There were some nice action sequences I'm never going to watch again. So, yeah.
I'm 1,000% on board with you on that one.
So this pilot did a 1.2 rating in the demo with 3.2 million viewers, which for the CW is quite good. For one of these sort of big four networks, it would actually be okay. 3.2 million is a little low, but a 1.2 demo rating is better than some of the ratings we've seen. So it's not like a monster hit, but for the CW, it's, the premiere was a decent sized hit. What is your sense on canceled quickly, making it through the season, or renewed for next season?
I think at this point it's going to make it through the season. This is a big, title that's being backed. Like, it's, the whatever DC comic book universe. So I feel like it at least has the title to back it up for at least a season.
Yeah, it's definitely making it through a season. And those ratings, again, for the CW are quite good. I'm wondering what's going to happen if if it continues to feel as inessential as it does, because I think that's what, the comic book people, the people who sort of love all these shows naturally, and I'm not, no shade, just, there's just a group of people. I think what kills a comic book show is if those people stop caring about it, like if it just doesn't feel like it's essential to the universe. And so I'm wondering if that's what could happen here, if it just stops feeling, if there's not enough people watching, if the audience dips a bit, if it just stops feeling important, if that's what could happen. But as of right now, I would guess it's going to be renewed for a second season. I think the numbers are good enough and the property is good enough that the CW isn't going to go around canceling DC shows. They're not going to compromise their most profitable relationships. So I would guess renewed for next season, although we'll see how the ratings hold up.
Absolutely.
So, Olivia, your final verdict, thumbs up or thumbs down on DC's Legends of Tomorrow?
Based on all of our comments, I would say it's going to be a big thumbs down for me. This just isn't for me.
Yeah, no curveball with the last minute thumbs up anyway. No.
Surprisingly. Yeah, could you imagine?
Yeah, well, after my rant, I feel like I have to give it a thumbs down as well. I can't very well make a turn now. Yeah, it's just... Hey, if you know what, if you love this stuff already and you love this stuff unconditionally, then you're gonna watch no matter what we tell you. So more power to you. But for the rest of us, no. This is a no.
Not really.
All right. Well, you've been listening to the Pilot Roundtable, a TVBinges.com and Southgate Media Group production. You can listen to all of our episodes on iTunes, where you can rate and review us. We'd appreciate that. Or find us at SouthgateMediaGroup.com. Follow Olivia on Twitter at RichardsOlivia and me on Twitter at KyleLovesTV. Until next time.